Well, this is going to be a much different video than what you're used to seeing from my channel, but with the release of the latest episode of Ahsoka, this being episode 4, I feel like I have something to weigh in on this, specifically with the fight scenes. And it feels only right that since we're reviewing an Ahsoka episode that I should wear this shirt, so... Alright, much better. So far, the chatter online seems to be kind of mixed on the fight scenes in Ahsoka. Some people like that it's a little bit more simplistic, a little bit more realistic, and has a little bit more story behind it, while others were kind of hoping for that prequel era, you know, flashy combat with lots of flips, very, very heavily choreographed. For me as a martial artist though, I can tell you one thing, the flashy prequel fights, while they might be fun, and I do enjoy them, they are not realistic in any sense of the word. While my martial arts expertise is primarily limited to open hand combat, I do know the basics of kendo, and I have experience in Kali stick fighting. Again, while I really enjoy the prequel fights, sparring matches are more often going to look like this versus this. In this breakdown, I'm primarily going to be focusing on the Baylan Skull versus Ahsoka fight. And in this, let's first start by looking at the real-world inspiration behind both of these characters.
Baylan is pretty easy to identify. Everything from his stance and his grip on the blade to his armor all tells me that he's based on medieval knights.
As for Ahsoka, it's a little bit harder to pinpoint, but I do think I have a good theory.
My best guess is that Ahsoka's fighting style was inspired by Miyamoto Musashi, a legendary samurai who is credited with developing the dual-wielding technique of using one katana and one wakizashi. Even here you can see how losing one lightsaber might throw her off because she's so used to dual-wielding.
Now that we have our inspirations out of the way, let's take a look at the actual fight. I'm not going to play the entire fight, I'm just going to take some snippets from it and talk over those. So let's take a look at the first exchange.
In this clip you can see both of them biding their time waiting to see what the other's going to do. And when they finally do start striking at each other, they're controlled, directed, and it doesn't last for very long.
Again, this opening exchange isn't super flashy, but I do think it does a good job building tension. On top of that, as I've said before, this is very realistic. Speaking from experience, when you're sparring a new opponent, one of the first things you're going to do is test them. You want to see what their tendencies are, what they're typically going to do when you do a kick or a punch. You got to test them and see what their response is going to be so that you can plan your next move. The initial exchange is typically followed by a pause. This pause lets both opponents think about their next move, kind of like a game of chess. And that's exactly what happens here. Ahsoka and Baylan have a quick exchange of about 4 strikes. They then take the time to consider their next move. And as the fight progresses, there's less and less pauses because they start to learn more and more about each other's fighting styles. I don't have much more to add, but what I will say is that just like in a real fight, if your head's not in the game, you lose focus. And when you lose focus, you start losing, and that's exactly what happens to Ahsoka.
On top of burning her hand from grabbing the map, she now thinks that Sabine is dead, and this causes her to get angry and lose focus on the fight. As you can see, Baylan's strength now starts to overwhelm her.
In conclusion, while the fights in Ahsoka probably aren't as entertaining as the prequel fights, especially Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan versus Darth Maul and Anakin versus Obi-Wan, the sense of realism that I get from these fights is very appreciated, especially as a martial artist, and I think they are still entertaining. Definitely they are better than the fights in the sequels. So if you want to see me break down more fights in pop culture, like from Ip Man or other movies and TV shows, let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you all soon.